All right, everybody, good afternoon. Definitely had to make a video about this because if I don't, everybody's going to be asking me what I think about it. Everybody's going to be chatting about it in the comments of unrelated videos. And given that I'm streaming all day tomorrow, it would come up a lot. So let's just go ahead and make this video now discussing this piece of, I don't know if you're going to call it news, but it's a report, right? It's got some credibility to it, but we don't know. We don't know. So this comes from Condotta, though. So it's probably at the very least worth listening to. So let's go ahead and talk this through. The Seahawks reportedly offered Geno Smith a 2-year deal in the 40 to 45 million per year range. Smith rejected the offer without a counteroffer and requested a trade. That comes from Condotta. Now, first, before I say anything else, let me just say this. This report directly contradicts the report from, I think it was Albert Breer. Albert Breer said that the Seahawks wanted something around 35 and Geno wanted something around 45, and they couldn't meet in the middle. So this report directly contradicts that. He's saying that Smith didn't even make a counteroffer and he was going to get something over 40 million a year, pretty close to that supposed $45 million range, and he didn't want it and he wasn't even interested in trying to ask for something more. He just wanted out. So somebody is wrong. It's either Albert Breer or Bob Condotta. Both those guys cannot be right. So somebody is getting this wrong. And let me also say this. This could easily be John Schneider and Seahawks front office spin. We see this happen all the time when a team parts ways with a notable player. The team will release reports through various reporters trying to spin the story to make themselves look better. This is what happens every time the Red Sox lose a player in Boston. The Boston media goes into overdrive trying, or no, I shouldn't say that because it's not the media person. Like, it wouldn't be Condotta, right? Condotta is just reporting what he hears. But what the team's front office will do sometimes is release reports for the media to run with that paint the team in the best light possible. This might be the Seahawks trying to spin things to say, well, there's nothing that I could have done. I tried. I was willing to pay him as much as he supposedly wanted, and he didn't want to be here. So, first of all, we have to ask ourselves if we buy this. But if we do buy this, this definitely changes things. It does. This definitely casts things in a new light, and we have to reconsider our stance here. Now, I'm not so sure that I'm buying it personally, but let's live in a world for a minute here where we assume this is correct and Albert Breer was incorrect. So the idea is that Geno Smith didn't want to be here because he didn't make a counteroffer. If Geno wanted to be here, even if the counteroffer was ridiculous, even if he wanted to get paid 60 million, he would have asked for it. He didn't even ask for that. He just said, "I want to trade." So that obviously does change things a little bit. That means there isn't necessarily anything John could have done in this moment. And I want to stress that part of it too, because there's another thing here. The thing that I'm hearing from some Seahawks fans now is, oh, well, if this is true, then it's not John's fault. John has nothing to do with this. There's nothing he could do. And I think that that assessment could not be more incorrect, unless the only way I look at this and I go, oh, John Schneider is now absolved of all blame here, is if what happened, and I guess this is possible, Geno Smith only cared about getting to play for Pete Carroll, right? Because this is not Geno Smith going to the East Coast. This isn't Geno Smith going to a contending team, a team that already has some great team in place and just needs a quarterback. It's not any of those things. Like, normally when a player wants to leave a West Coast team to go to an East Coast team, that's what we would say, right? We would say, oh, I guess he just wants to play on the East Coast because there's more media attention there. Things are happening a little bit more there. He doesn't want to be on the West Coast. He went to a West Coast team with the Raiders. Like, that's not really any different. He went to a very big, very active city, but it's not like he just wanted to move to, like, he played college football at West Virginia, right? He's nowhere near West Virginia. It's not like he wanted to be closer to where he played college or anything like that. No, he just wanted to go to the Raiders. So I don't think it's anything like that, right? It's not like he went to New York. It's not like he went to a team that is ready to go compete for a Super Bowl right this very second. They were one of the worst teams in the league last year. If he wanted to play for a contender, there's no way you'd choose to go for the Raiders. So the only way John Schneider is in any way absolved of guilt is if Geno Smith got tunnel vision around the idea of getting to play for Pete Carroll, which I guess I'm not ruling that out. But I think there's a far more likely explanation here, and it does not let John Schneider off the hook in any way, shape, or form. Quite simply, I think the more likely explanation here is that Geno Smith doesn't believe that John Schneider is capable of doing what John Schneider needs to do to build a good supporting support unit around a quarterback. He was tired of playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in football. He was tired of dealing with these substandard offensive coaches like Ryan Grubb and Shane Waldron. Maybe he didn't like Kubiak. I doubt it. But maybe he just felt like the damage had already been done and he didn't even want to try to figure out if Kubiak would be good or not. He just shrugged his shoulders and went, well, after the Ryan Grubb thing completely blew up and was a complete disaster, he just figured I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I don't like the decisions this team is making, and they've broken the trust. They've broken the trust. So the fact that we couldn't build the offensive line, the fact that we were struggling to put an offensive system around him, the fact that just the team in general was not able to get to where Geno Smith felt like he could be the best version of himself, I think that's far more likely to be an explanation for this. And if that's the case, John Schneider is in the crosshairs more than ever because he absolutely has failed to build the offensive line. And in many ways, even though, and I want you guys to think about this for a second here, Geno Smith took a discounted deal a few years ago. He did. Geno Smith took a deal far less than pretty much every other veteran quarterback. The deal he got was slightly better than the deal that Jimmy Garoppolo got with the Raiders, I believe, that same offseason. And that was not something that a good, credible quarterback was taking at that point in time in any other example. Coming off a season where he got an MVP vote, and the team still could not fix the offensive line, right? The story for years was that the Seahawks couldn't afford a good offensive line because Russell Wilson was taking all our money. Obviously, that wasn't true. That was cope. But then you get Geno Smith, and he's making a lot less money than Russell Wilson. And it's like, okay, now we can build the offensive line, right? No, it was worse than ever. In some ways, it was the worst offensive line the Seahawks have had in the John Schneider era. So he looks at that and he realizes, look, I want a pay raise. I do. I deserve it. I'm clearly a good enough quarterback to deserve more money. And maybe the Seahawks are willing to give it to me, but how are they going to build an offensive line then? Am I just going to get the crap kicked out of me for the rest of my career? Am I going to get hurt because I'm getting hit constantly in ways that quarterbacks should not get hurt? I don't want to come back for any price. I want to go somewhere that actually has a chance to build around me, and the Raiders at least have a chance. They've got a better offensive line than the Seahawks do. If they play their cards right, I guess they could get to a point where they're supporting the quarterback better. And Geno Smith's going to bet on himself a little bit here. So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. That's kind of how I'm feeling about this. So first of all, if this report is true, regardless of which report is true, Breer or Condotta, this does prove that we wanted to keep Geno Smith and we got blindsided. So that's number one. I don't want to hear anything else about how the plan was to not have Geno in 2025. Clearly, the plan was to have Geno. Whoever you believe, the plan was to have Geno in 2025, and we got blindsided by him either wanting too much money compared to what we were willing to give or not wanting to be here at all. So what we're doing right now, this is not John Schneider sitting in his office at the VMAC, planning everything out perfectly like he's the Emperor from Star Wars, and he just feels like, okay, this is all going according to my design. This is not going according to his design in any way, shape, or form right now, whoever you believe. But more than that, John Schneider is the if what I just went through is correct. Again, any scenario other than Geno Smith only cares about playing for Pete Carroll, any scenario other than Geno Smith sees nothing except the opportunity to play under the coach who believed in him and gave him his second chance in the first place, it's still John Schneider's fault because he has failed to do what most other GMs in this league have shown they can do better. Build around a really good quarterback. And don't forget, we're going beyond Geno Smith here. Did John Schneider do a very good job building around Russell Wilson after Russell Wilson signed his extensions in Seattle? I mean, I guess it depends on your perspective. In some ways, yes, but in other ways, no. We were never able to break through that divisional round wall, that divisional round ceiling. So this is not just a Geno Smith thing. This also goes back to the Russell Wilson thing. Once the quarterback started making more than peanuts, it was a struggle. And maybe that was Pete Carroll's GM stuff interfering. But right now, I'm looking at a little more than a year, like 14 months of Schneider with no Carroll. I'm not impressed. Last year's free agency signings were an F- disaster. The draft, mixed bag so far. Coaching hire, I mean, the head coach was good, but the OC was not. So right now I'm looking at a GM who is making the wrong moves. All right, guys. So hopefully I don't have to talk about this Geno Smith stuff too much anymore because, again, the more I hear about it, the more I get irritated and the more it becomes clear that John Schneider's incompetence is a big part of the reason why we're here right now. And again, I don't know what's going on. I am confused about what the direction is right now. Clearly, the plan was to contend in 2025, and now because Geno Smith didn't want to be here, we're trying to do it with somebody else, and we're still going to pay big money to do it for a lesser quarterback in Sam Darnold. And now we're going to try to do it even though we're about to, it sounds like, give DK Metcalf away for not a heck of a lot of compensation. And we're still going to try to compete. Sorry, guys. I know some people are trying to talk themselves into it. I'm not going to be one of them. I think that this is, if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm not happy with the way this offseason is going. And it's not because of any one individual move. It's not because, oh man, we traded Geno. He was my favorite player. By the way, Geno's not my favorite player. But it's not just because of that. It's not because, oh man, we're trading Metcalf. It's because I can't make sense of the body of work of moves so far in conjunction with each other. I don't see how this is committing to one side of it. I see some moves that indicate we're going one way, and I see some moves that indicating we're going the other way. And people have said in my comments year after year after year, ever since Geno became the starter, is you don't want to commit to Geno Smith because he marries you to mediocrity. I don't agree with that at all. I think that is actually very far from the reality, very far from truth. But I can't think of anything that marries you to mediocrity more than giving a big contract to Sam Darnold, having him work with substandard receiver cores, and giving a big chunk of your cap space. And we'll see the contract. I don't know yet. But giving a significant chunk of your cap space to an aging defensive tackle like Jarran Reed. All right, we'll see what happens next. But yeah, I'm a little bit. I don't know. I'm not feeling it right now, guys. I'm just not. I'm not really feeling where this team is going right now. I'm confused. I'm not so confused about this. And by the way, again, we don't even know if this is true. This contradicts Breer's reporting. Somebody's wrong. Somebody has bad info. It could be the other report just as easily. We'll see what Breer says. Maybe Breer comes out and says, oh, I had bad info. Condotta knows everything. Or maybe the other way around at some point. But I'm scratching my head a little bit right now because I don't know what the plan is. I know what the plan is, but I'm not a big fan of where this plan is headed. See you guys later. Go Hawks.